It's the Jersey Blitz, NJ.com's high school football podcast. Thanks for joining us on episode 12 as we will break down all of the South and Central sectional championships in groups 1 through 5 in the public school ranks, as well as taking a look at the non-public playoffs as well. As we will start things off, taking a look at the Central Group 5 sectional championship. The two top seeds have come to play in that final. Number 1, Washington Township taking on number 2, Atlantic City. And Bill Evans, Washington Township, looking to make a little history for the first time since 1995 if they could bring home that sectional championship.
Yeah, they've had some playoff heartbreaks over the last few decades, and especially the last few years. They were number 1 seed in 2021 and lost in the first round to Lenape. Last year they did make it to the sectional final. Were big underdogs against Toms River North and went up there and couldn't come away with the upset. They're looking really strong right now and looking like they're a team that can break that string of not getting over the hump. They dominated a pretty good previously undefeated Cherry Hill East team. It was just a total team effort. The defense was obviously very strong, only allowed one touchdown, shut down the East Vaughan running game. On the other side of the ball, Cole Aquino was 10 of 11 for close to 200 yards. Couple backs, Colin Beeler, who was their main back, had a solid game. Jalen Robinson, who's a standout linebacker, doesn't touch the ball much, but he had 2 long touchdown runs. They were on point in every way, and looking like a team that if they can continue to play that way, which they have over the last few weeks. They had a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season when they got shut out by Rancocas Valley, but they're playing much better now, and they're going against an Atlantic City team that has also been on a hot streak. They lost their first 2 games and have won every game since. The big key for Atlantic City there could be the health of quarterback Peaky Roseboro. He hurt his shoulder early in that game. Now Kevin Interest came in and did a nice job and helped get them past Cherokee. But Roseboro had been one of the best quarterbacks in South Jersey in over the last couple of weeks. He'd thrown for over 300 yards in 3 straight games, over 390 in 2 of those. Had 15 touchdowns with 1 interception. If he's not in the game or if he's limited, that's a big loss for Atlantic City. Obviously, they do have the best player in this game, which is Rutgers commit Sanye Graffin Wright, most commonly known as Ice Cup. He's been dealing with an ankle injury most of the season, but looks healthy. Had 5 touchdown catches in the first playoff game. Had a big touchdown run to seal the game against Cherokee, and whether Peaky Roseboro is healthy or not, he's obviously going to be a big key to this game.
Looking now at South Group 5 in the championship final again, it's a matchup of the top 2 seeds. Toms River North, the number 1 seed, the 2-time defending champions in Group 5, taking on Rancocas Valley, the number 2 seed. And this is going to be a game that I'm actually going to be at and calling for NJ.com/watch on Friday night. Joe Zedalis, what is it to make of Toms River North's close call against Kingsway? And do they have someone that can take the lead in a big game as they're trying to remain as the top dog in Group 5 in all of the Garden State?
Dan, I'm starting to believe that when people have asked, hey, what's wrong with Toms River North? And I'm starting to believe the answer is nothing. I think they are just who and what they are at this point. Now, what's wrong with Toms River North? Wow, they gave up 14 points in the game, Dan, for only the second time all year. Gave up 14 or more points. They're the best defensive team in the short conference. They've only allowed 59 points. They've scored 417. So do they have some anomalies that we haven't been able to figure out? Yes. They can't run the football, whether that's because, they don't have an offensive line that lends itself to that kind of physical downhill running game, or they choose not to. But the question about who's going to be the leader is a good one. And I believe it's going to be senior quarterback TJ Valerio. But if you can imagine this is TJ Valerio's only his second playoff start. So, it's a tight game in the middle of the third quarter. And I could just imagine these guys in the huddle looking around, looking for number 1, Micah Ford, and saying, okay, Micah, we're going to jump on your back, take us to the end zone. And there is no Micah Ford. Now, TJ Valero's playing at a high level. He led him down the field. He threw a touchdown pass for the game winner. And I mean, North had a chance to, to put the game away with a field goal in the fourth quarter, and they missed it, which kept it close. And one other thing people should know about the Kingsway team they played last week. Micah Ford is the number one, the best quarterback in Townsville North history. The number two quarterback in Townsville North history is a kid named Mike Husney, who is now the offensive coordinator at Kingsway. And Mike Husney was yelling things out to the Kingsway defense. This guy's getting the ball on this play just because he grew up in that offense. But I do think TJ Valerio is coming on strong. This kid has 1,972 yards this year. That's more yards than Micah Ford had either last year or the year before that. He's already surpassed Micah Ford in career touchdown and in career passing yards. This year, he's been good with the football. He has 23 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He hasn't thrown an interception in 3 games, and his numbers are through the roof, Dan. He's 108 for 150, 72%. So I think he can make things happen. I think he's the guy who makes the offense go. He just doesn't make it go with his legs. He makes it go with his arms, and they have plenty of speed on the outside to catch it.
Bill Evans, the Red Devils of Rancocas Valley, they've got a high-flying and potent offense, and this has all the makings of going to be a big-time scoring game on Friday night.
Yeah, I'm predicting something in the neighborhood of like 38-35. The Rancocas Valley is, I mean, they're solid on, they can be solid on defense. I should say that they've had their moments. That they did shut out Washington Township early in the year. They have a freshman defensive lineman named Michael Beasley who's going to be a stud for the next 3 years. That has 7 sacks. But look, they can be run on. They gave up 282 rushing yards to Hillsboro last week. They've had a couple games this year. Shawnee quarterback Cole Anderson ran for 200 yards on them. They gave up a bunch of running yards in a loss to Pascack Valley at the Battle of the Beach. But they are explosive on offense. I mean, against Hillsboro, they took the lead 5 times and gave it up 4. And so I think it's going to be that kind of game, back and forth. Quarterback Savion Adams is a dual threat guy. This is his first. He's a junior, his first year as a starter, and he's really come on strong as the year's going on. They have one of the best receivers, arguably in the state, in Brody Dieter. A couple options, running back in Montre Wilson and Jameer Bellamy. Definitely a lot of athletes there. Adams and Bellamy both ran for over 100 yards in the last game, so they're going to put some points on the board for sure. I know Joe talked about Toms River North has a very good defense, and they will test RV, but I trust that they're going to score a couple touchdowns in this game, and it's just going to be a matter of how many they're going to give up.
Looking now at Central Group 4, it's a matchup of the top 2 seeds again. Millville, the number 1 overall seed, taking on number 2 Brick Memorial and Kevin Minnick. Millville, they're rightfully so, known for their high-flying offense, but it's been their defense getting it done that's led them to pick up 8 wins this season.
Yeah, Dan, Millville gets a lot of attention for what it does offensively. Obviously we look at Latsier Brooks, the Alabama commit, and everything that he's done for them. But defensively, this team is really good. In their 8 wins, they come in at 8-2. In their 8 wins, they've allowed only 7 touchdowns. They've got kids like the offense does. They got kids on defense that just fly to the football and are extremely athletic. Darian Blatchowitz has 5 sacks. Octavian Space has 6.5. And then Jaden Jones, who plays on the edge, he's got 4 sacks. They get to the quarterback, and they're athletic and they're quick. They make things happen so fast that, the opposition hardly has the time to blink. So defensively, they are built for the postseason. Offensively, they're built for the postseason. You look at the offense, and they have a first-year quarterback and a sophomore, Robert O'Connor, who has really blossomed into a pretty good quarterback for them. In his first season, he just has to know how to manage the game and not force the issue. He's got a kid like Brooks, where if he can just get Brooks the ball in just a little bit of space, we all know what Brooks is capable of doing. They got other wide receivers in Reggie Holly who can do the same thing. And the running game itself is pretty darn good too. They've rushed for a ton of yards, 1,200, almost 1,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. So they can get it done on the ground as well. I think Millville is just an all-around solid football team. They're going to put pressure on you on both sides of the ball. And like I said, they're built for this time of year. This is their 4th straight sectional final. There's a sour taste in their mouth from losing to Mainland last year, after winning a state championship the year before and the regional championship, when this group of seniors were freshmen. So it's an experienced bunch. It's a very talented bunch. And, they got one goal, and that's a state championship. And they don't care how they do. They don't care what you think of them. They're going to step on the pedal at every moment. And, if they score 50 points, they score 50 points. They are born for this time of year, and they're going to be ready to compete.
Joe Zedalis, Brick Memorial, if they have any chance of pulling the upset here against Millville in the Central Group 4 final, they're going to be hoping to have a huge performance from their sensational dual threat quarterback.
Yeah, Jason Lajara has had a phenomenal year. He's replacing a kid who rewrote the Brick Memorial record book. But, listen to Kevin talk about Millville, and I think the question that comes to mind for Brick Memorial is, can they get any stops? Now, Brick Memorial has only lost to Point Pleasant Boro and Township North. That's not too bad. I mean, they've given up 157 and scored 350. But, with all the weapons Millville has, that's my wonder. Can Brick Memorial get enough stops to stay in the game? I mean, the defense has played pretty well all year. The ringleader of that team on defense is Trey Talmadge. He's a standout wrestler for Brick Memorial. He's got 77 stops. Brick Memorial is going to need to compete and win up front. That's going to be the question for them when they're on defense. I think they'll keep the big plays in check, or at least they have the potential to do so. I mean, on offense, Lahara is just terrific. Anybody who's listened to the podcast before has heard me talk a little bit about this kid. He played on the national flag football team in Los Angeles during the summer. The kid is a water bug, changes direction on a dime, scrambles around, extends plays, makes plays with his feet and his arm. Small kid, but I don't think they're going to stand there and let him face the rush in the pocket. I think they're going to let him, be on the edge, give him some RPO options there. I mean, he's a good player. He's 84 for 135. He's got 1799 yards, 17 touchdowns, and only 4 picks. So he doesn't generally throw the ball into trouble. The rushing game for Brick Memorial has, become different. The big expectation was for senior Kevin Andrews he's a 2,000-yard rusher, for him to be the main factor in that run game. He's been a little bit banged up, so they moved a wide receiver, a young man named Nazir Whitaker, from wide receiver to running back. Very quick feet, very decisive, quick through the hole. He makes himself small in the hole, and he's got 411 yards and 3 touchdowns. For Brick Memorial, the dangerous guy on defense is Nazir Matthews. He's got 27 grabs for 745 and 9 touchdowns. So I think Brick Memorial's had a good year. I think they've played a good schedule. I'm just not positive they're ready to tangle with a team that has that as much horsepower as Millville does. But as the saying goes, that's why you play the game.
Taking a look at South Group 4, it's number 1 seeded Winslow taking on number 3 seeded Shawnee. And Bill Evans, this is a juicy matchup, not only because it's 2 longtime rivals, but there's a couple of different storylines embedded in this matchup that are of note to you.
Yeah, Tim Gashu is the Shawnee coach. He's in his 42nd season. He has 290 wins, and the Winslow coach Bill Belton, when he was a standout quarterback at Winslow, he played against Tim Gashu, and so was kind of really looking forward to this matchup and meeting up with him in the in a sectional final. You know, if Tim Gushue is to win his 291st game this weekend, it might be the best of his career, and that's saying something with all the championships that Shawnee's won, the years that they've gone into the playoffs with 2 wins and ended up a sectional champion. This is a heavy lift. Winslow is just at this point. Their passing offense appears pretty much unstoppable. I mean, they've scored over 40 points in 6 straight games. Jalen Parker has during that stretch has thrown at least 4 touchdowns in every game but one, and the one he didn't, he threw for 3. He has so many weapons. Cam Miller, one wide receiver, is going to Wisconsin. Marcus Upton's going to Boston College. They have a couple juniors and Nikir Helton who's going. He's an FBS prospect. Nakeem Powell is another junior that could be a division FBS player. They have a really good freshman in TJ Maddox, and this past week another junior, Julian Peterson, had been banged up all year, had not had a catch all season. Caught a pass out in the flat for his first catch of the year, shook a tackle, made a couple moves downfield, and ran off for a 57-yard touchdown. That's your 6th receiver. There's no team in the state, public or probably even non-public, that has the defensive backs that can match up with all of those guys. And then you obviously you look at Shawnee. How do you keep them off the field? How do you keep Winslow off the field? They've got a pretty good running game with Brett Lundberg. They have a freshman quarterback in Cole Anderson who is a really good runner and is developing as a passer. I saw his first start earlier this year against RV when he ran for 200 yards, but had a little difficulty even throwing a spiral, to be honest. And he admitted he's a baseball player first, and he's still learning how to throw a football. Well, you can kind of tell that he's learned because last week he only ran for 32 yards, but he threw the ball really well against Middletown North and kind of helped win that game with his arm. So he's going to have to pick his spots where he can make a pass, and Shawnee's going to have to run the ball and kind of keep that explosive offense from Winslow off the field. Could be a very interesting game, but obviously Winslow is still the heavy favorite here. But definitely one that the players, the coaches, and the fans are all going to be looking forward to.
Taking a look at Central Group 3 in the sectional final, it's going to be top-seeded Somerville taking on number 7 Delsea. Delsea, one of the most dangerous 7 seeds that you'll ever see in this side of the bracket. And Mike Kinney, Somerville is a team that, while they've been getting it done offensively, it's the old adage of defense wins championships, and that's what's been leading Somerville to this opportunity to bring home another title here on the weekend.
Yeah, no question about that, Dan. Their defense has played well all season and has been exceptional over the last 7 weeks or so. Over those last 7 weeks, they've allowed only 5 points a game, and that's their tough linebacking core and pressure on in the backfield and a secondary that's come up with 14 interceptions this year. So that defense is right now primed for postseason play. Thing is, there's no doubt that Matt Bloom has told his kids, because he told me this could come down to one play could decide this game. It's not the scenario you would envision when an undefeated team is playing a 4-6 team, but he has warned his kids, and they've seen it on film. This Delsea team is as battle tested as any team they've played. Delsea has, among Delsea's opponents this year, 6 teams that they've played are still alive in the playoffs. 5 of them will be playing for sectional titles this weekend in the public schools, and Holy Spirit is still alive, and they're playing St. Thomas Aquinas in the non-public B quarterfinals. So Delsea is 4-6, but Delsea has played some big guns. They know how to handle themselves, and they're playing right now well enough to get into the semifinal and test Somerville. So Matt Bloom is worried about them, and rightly so, because when you look at Somerville's schedule, although they've played some really talented teams, there's not one team on Somerville's schedule that's still alive in the playoffs. It's just Somerville. Somerville, every team they played has already been bounced. So they're playing a team that has the schedule's been tough. So Brendan Pacheco, quarterback for Somerville, does a great job of spreading it out with his receivers. Brady Shire's top receiver. Josh Rodriguez, a very good receiver. Terrell Mitchell out of the backfield, an excellent receiver. They've got a very good, very athletic and skilled receiving core. Terrell Mitchell, an excellent running back who uses his blocks well. He's over 1,000 yards. The balance of Somerville's offense could give Delsea some troubles because Pacheco is a guy who can run the ball when he needs to, but he's also a guy who throws with extreme accuracy. He finds his receivers in exactly the positions they want to get the football, and they run their routes with great precision. But again, I'm going to go back to the defense because that's going to be the key to stop a Delsea team that is going to come in feeling pretty good about itself. Again, because of the schedule it's faced, the linebackers have been outstanding for Somerville, and that's Max Nuzzi, Sean O'Neill, Matt Chibenko, and a sophomore named Justin Bowen, who's done tremendous things for a kid who was playing JV last year. The secondary is guys I've mentioned: Rodriguez, Shire, and Mitchell lead that secondary, which is so tough because those linebackers do such a great job of getting to the quarterback on stunt positions, of filling the gaps on run plays, of making things happen and causing the quarterbacks to rush their throws. Secondary steps in and gets those 14 interceptions, and they've also forced 6 fumbles. So Somerville knows how to get the ball on the carpet, and then the offense does a great job of taking advantage of that and getting to the end zone off those turnovers. So they have to play that kind of football again. Play the defense they've been playing for the last 7 weeks, and let Brendan Pacheco do his thing. Early lead will be key here, and that's what they've done the last 7 weeks because they cannot let Delsea get any confidence in this game. That's going to be key. And Matt Blum's prediction that it could be one play could exactly be that if Somerville doesn't have itself a comfortable lead at halftime.
Kevin Minnick, Delsea has been a completely different team since changing up its offense and play calling, and it's turned back the clock to what's earned them so many championships in program history in decades. So what do they have to do to be successful here to bring home another sectional championship?
Dan, Delsea has 16 sectional titles. They're the defending Group 3 state champions, so there's some players on this team with big game experience. This is not the same Delsea team that started the season. The Delsea team that opened up against Woodstown, and I was at that game, looked nothing like a Delsea team I had seen in the past. They won once in their first 6 games, which is nearly unheard of for Delsea football. Jason Volpe came in, and I think as a first-year coach, he probably wanted to put his stamp on the program a little bit. They changed the offense, went to more of a passing game than the traditional wing tee that they had run for decades. And I think, it finally got to the point where I think everybody knew a change had to be made. So they changed the offense. Former head coach Sal Marquez, who had kind of, he has not disappeared. He was around the program. He was seeing what was going on. So they bring Sal in. Sal starts to call the plays. They run the wing tee, and they pound the football. This is a team that this team was routinely one of the state's number 1, number 2, number 3 team in rushing offense year after year after year. So all of a sudden, Delsea's now rushing the ball again, and they're piling up the yards, 300 and some odd yards here, close to 3 there, and now it's a completely different football team. Somerville, as Mike said, is going to have to play extremely well to beat Delsea. Delsea is not a 4-win team that you look at and say, oh, well, that's nothing. They only got 4 wins. No. This Delsea team is going to run the football. And I'm going to say if they put the ball in the air, maybe twice in this game. I can't see them doing it. The change and in the offense of running the football between Dan Russo, Alex Grippo. Russo is an all-state running back from a year ago. He's going to touch the ball 25 to 30 times in this attack in this game. And Delsea is going to try to put together drives that are not just 5 and 6 yards. They're going to try to put drives together that are 14 and 15 play drives that are going to chew up 6 and 7 and 8 minutes off the clock. They're fine with picking up 3 or 4 yards at a time, moving the chains, and just wearing down the defense. So I think that's the biggest thing that you're going to see in this Delsea team is that they're going to keep the ball on the ground. They're going to be motivated, to do so. And when they are on defense, they're pretty good as well. and they return Russo and Grippo were outstanding linebackers, and they bring back a kid in Jonathan Harris, who at the beginning of the season we thought was going to be playing football and was going to be one of the best defensive ends in at least in South Jersey. He decided between some injuries and wanted to focusing on track that maybe, okay, well, football may not be in the cards. Well, Jonathan Harris came back at the same time the offense changed. And in speaking to this one person who saw Harris play in his second game, said he was the best defensive end he saw all season. So Delsea is going to be ready on offense. They're going to be ready on defense. And, this game may take an hour and a half if they can keep the ball on the ground, keep the clock running, and move the chains. So I give Delsea every chance in the world to go up against a team in Somerville that may be undefeated, but may not have faced a team that runs the football as effectively as I think Delsea's going to do.
And that game is going to be, again, one of our 2 Friday broadcast games on NJ.com, Somerville versus Delsea, as well as the Toms River North and Rancocas Valley games. You can watch those games live and on demand on NJ.com/watch. Now we take a look at South Group 3 in that sectional final between 2 teams that have a ton of experience playing in sectional finals. It's going to be number 2 seeded Mainland, who are the Group 4 state champions from a season ago. They're now down in Group 3, taking on number 4 seed Seneca. And Kevin Minnick, what do you see transpiring in that matchup?
Dan, this is a game between 2 teams that, obviously we know Mainland had some tremendous success last year. An historic season for that program, 14-0. They win the Group 4 state title, and they just demolish teams. Running the football, predominantly, that being the success, for their team. You got Seneca, another team who is now playing in its 3rd straight sectional final. They lost probably 80 to 85% of their offense from last year with the graduation of Zach Fearon. So in Seneca, I kind of look at a team that maybe, most people didn't think was going to be here. But under first-year coach Anthony DiRio, they've done a great job of doing what they needed to do to win games. And, going up and beating Hopewell Valley last week in a revenge game was huge for them. Obviously you win or you go home, but Hopewell Valley had pinned a 35-12 loss on Seneca a month ago. And Seneca turns around and wins this game 28-25, to get themselves to the point where we're at today. Seneca is extremely effective when Anthony Tirico is at his best. And he's only a sophomore quarterback, but he's close to 2,000 yards passing. He's close to 1,000 yards rushing, and he makes this team go. Now, he took a nasty hit against Paulus 6 leading into the tournament that, had him a little questionable as to how effective he would be in the playoffs, but he's come on extremely strong. And, he gets the ball out to receivers. He's got 4 quality receivers that all have at least 18 catches. Jamar Warthen, Brody Phillips, Jake Hassan, and Nate Sauerwald, with Jamar Warthen being his main target. And he runs the ball extremely well himself as well. So, Mainland's going up and facing a dual threat quarterback that has got some college looks already. And when he's at his best, has moved that offense. On the flip side, you look at Mainland and them dropping to Group 3 this year. I think at the beginning of the season, a lot of people thought this would be where Mainland was at. It would be a matter of how healthy they would be and how they handled their schedule. They had a brutal schedule in their own division in the West Jersey Football League American, which consisted also of Millville, Winslow, St. Augustine, and Cherokee. Their 3 losses are to St. Augustine, Millville, and Winslow. So they come in battle tested. They've got some kids who played on that 14-0 team last year. And I think, when you have a team that has so much change in it, to have at least a few kids with that championship experience is huge. And obviously it's been the case this year. John Franchini, there's only a junior at quarterback. It's his 3rd year starting, and he's thrown for almost 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns. He didn't have to throw the ball all that much last year, but this year he's thrown the ball a lot more, and he's been effective. Jake Bloom is his number 1 target. He's had a fantastic year, record-setting year at Mainland for them with over 1,000 yards receiving and 13 touchdowns. So he's done a nice job. And then in the run game, Rocco DiBiaso is that veteran back who last year was, played, I'd say, second fiddle to Stephen Ordilli running the football, but still an extremely tough and rugged running back who had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, or 3 touchdowns last week. And then on defense had 7 tackles and 2 sacks against Homedale. So, he brings that championship experience to them. They lost them guys. They lost the NJ.com Defensive Player of the Year in Jamie Tyson. They lost a premier running back in Stephen Ordilli, and they lost a Mr. Everything in Cohen Cook. But here they are playing for another championship because they've bought into the system. It's the next man up mentality, and they're doing things the right way. So, I think Mainland comes into this game as the favorite. I think it's going to be a decent game. I don't know that they're going to blow them off the field, but I think this is a game where we expected Mainland to be, given the schedule that it played, and Seneca maybe surprising a few teams.
Looking now at Central Group 2's final, it's going to be an all-shore conference matchup. Number 1 seeded Rumson-Fairhaven take on number 2 seeded Wall and Joe Zedalis. Here's the opportunity for Rumson-Fairhaven to once again bring home a sectional title if they try to keep their hopes alive of finally bringing home that elusive state championship.
Absolutely, Dan. As Bill and Kevin have said about a couple of teams down there, it's group championship or bust. And I believe that holds true for Rumson-Fairhaven too. They want to get back to the top of the mountain and do that. They're going to have to beat a Wall team, which, has kind of been a surprise in the shore conference. They might be a year ahead of schedule playing as well as they're playing, Dan. Wall's only loss is to Homedale. It has good wins over St. John Vianney and Manalapan. And this Wall team has kind of been charmed. I think sometimes before games, they walk through a cow pasture. I mean, they beat St. John Vianney with a 95-yard fumble return. They beat Manalapan by blocking a PAT. So they seem to rise to the occasion when they need to. They're not a fancy team. This team has taken on the Eddie Guerreri posture mantra. We're going to run the ball downhill, I formation, and play good defense. They have, for them, it's running back by committee. They don't have one guy who you have to stop. They have multiple guys. Their leading rusher at this point is Mason Adam, who is also a stellar inside linebacker. Leading rusher at this point in the year only has 534 yards. So they do spread the ball around a little bit. They also have Dylan Cohen, a junior who has 310, and the quarterback, Frankie Scarmamolino, has 216. He's done a good job, too. In the pass game, they're not a big down-the-field team, but they're going to go underneath. They're going to take what you give them. They're going to hope for a missed tackle or a busted coverage, and then they're going to burn you. Scarmolino has 936 yards and 11 TDs. Now, Wall is going up against a Rumson team, which offensively is as talented and a powerhouse so much or as much as anybody in the shore. They've scored 415 points, second in the shore conference, only to Toms of the North. And Rumson has been balanced. They move the ball with consistency. They don't put themselves in bad position in the kick game. They're really good at taking advantage of short fields. And I think they're going to be hard to beat. And the reason they're going to be hard to beat is because of the way their quarterback is playing. Senior Owen O'Toole, who has been under center for the last 2 trips to the Group 2 title game, is having an absolutely phenomenal year. He's got 2,249 yards passing. He's got 2 really capable wide receivers. Jordan Angstreich has 52 catches for 955 yards and 12 touchdowns. He wasn't even a blip on the radar at the beginning of the year when they were looking for a number 2 receiver behind Nick Thomas. This kid just emerged and has become a go-to guy for O'Toole. Thomas has 36 catches for 643. Rumson has 26 touchdowns in the passing game. They will throw the ball down the field, and they will beat you underneath. But they're not just a throwing team. They really have run the ball effectively. Last year, at some points, there was a question whether they were really going to be able to be consistent offensively. That has not been an issue this year. Kellen Murray, a junior, has, taken his place. Once that passing game gets moving, they hand him the ball, and he's been highly effective. This year, he's got 1,172 yards and 25 touchdowns. Last year, he had 7 touchdowns. So he's really capable. And the other thing is Rumson on both sides of the ball operates behind a very sizable and experienced offensive and defensive line. That's where it starts for the game. When they broke their 5-year losing streak to Red Bank Catholic, it started up front on both sides of the ball. They were able to run the ball on offense. They choked off the RBC passing game, and then they came with pressure. I think it's going to be a good football game, but I do see Rumson pulling away a little bit in the second half just because of the versatility and the balance of its offense.
The South Group 2 sectional final is going to be a matchup between top-seeded Camden and number 2-seeded Point Pleasant Boro. And Joe, Point Boro is going to be trying to use that same game plan that they used that nearly pulled off an upset of Toms River North earlier this season if they have hopes of taking down the Panthers for the sectional championship.
Dan, I'm calling this the Aesop's Fable game. It's the tortoise versus the hare. Camden, renowned for its athleticism, its speed, its big play potential over the years. And Point Boro is the epitome of 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They want to hold the ball. They want to drive it. Their offense, the flex bone, is essentially a shell game. Okay, keep your eye on the P. Where's the P? Where's the P? And you pick up the shell and it's not there. Their leading rusher is their fullback, a young man named Dylan Rietmeyer. He's got 942 yards, Dan. He's got 17 TDs. And here's the interesting number. His longest run from scrimmage is 7 yards. That shows you the kind of offense that Point Pleasant Boro wants to play. Now, Point Boro is not small up front. They have a lot of experience. They have good size. The addition of Louis DiBiase, a transfer from Donovan Catholic, has made a huge difference for them on both sides of the ball. He's a big kid, goes about 250, is an animal in the weight room. Point Boro will also run, wingback sweeps, wingback option, a lot of bootlegs. They have a sophomore wingback named Nick Spinola. He tortured Brick Memorial in their win over Brick Memorial. He's got 556 yards. And then you have their quarterback, sophomore Jake Clayton, first-time quarterback. He's good with his feet. And don't totally dismiss the Point Boro pass game. He has 13 completions only, Dan, 7 of them for touchdowns. He's thrown 4 touchdowns in his last 3 games. What they want to do is they're going to ride that fullback into the line, and they're daring you to move your safeties a little closer to the ball to choke off the run. They're going to play action and throw the ball deep. Now, the one question for Point Boro here is they have not faced a team like Camden. I mean, Camden is a team that hung 30 points on Kingsway, 44 on Shawnee, 44 on Rancocas Valley. I mean, their quarterback is outstanding. Mekhi Brunson's got, almost 1,700 yards passing. Their running back, Christian Barton, has almost 1,100 yards rushing. Even when they play Towns River North and Brick Memorial, they have not seen a team with the kind of offensive potential that Camden has because of their balance and versatility. So playing against a team that has a high-powered offense, the best thing you can do against a team like that is not let them have the football, and that is Point Boro's goal. They did that successfully against Toms River North. I've mentioned this before. At one point in their game against Toms River North, They ran 23 plays to Townsend and North's 1. So they are capable of long clock milking drives. They don't turn the ball over. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They don't get penalized very much. Their goal is just to keep the ball away from you and then make you get anxious and hopefully, make a bad throw or put the ball on the ground. It's going to be an interesting matchup because Point Borough is somewhat vulnerable to the pass, and I'm pretty sure Camden can throw it pretty well, Dan.
Bill Evans, Camden is trying to go for their third straight sectional championship, and as Joe alluded to, they have a scary offense that can get them to that mountaintop.
Yeah, this was a program that hadn't won a championship since 1976, despite beating on the door year after year, it seemed, until 2 years ago. And then they won 2 in a row, and now they have a chance to win 3 in a row. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere down there in Camden. The band's going to be playing the whole game. This is a very talented Camden team. As Joe mentioned, they're balanced on offense. Makai Brunson does have a number of weapons there in the passing games. Got guys like Dahani Cobbs and Malik Red. Christian Braxton is a good running back, and I feel like he's kind of the key when it seems like when they can get him going, the rest of the offense follows. Defensively, again, they've got 34 sacks. They forced 20 turnovers. But that's obviously against this Point Pleasant Borough team is they're not going to be able to really count on that big play. They're going to have to be really disciplined on that side of the ball. There are 2 playoff losses in the state semifinals last year were against a Delsea team that obviously had a very similar offensive philosophy. When you can't really turn those edge rushers loose and let them go get the quarterback or try to force turnovers. You really have to be disciplined. The couple of times I've seen Camden this year, they've kind of hurt themselves with some penalties, especially on offense. That's really the thing that can stop them offensively is when they stop themselves, with some motion or some holding penalties that have brought back some scores. Camden's going to have to play a very, very disciplined game. If they can do that, if they can limit the penalties, if they can be disciplined on defense and not try to do too much and just try to get some stops because they're very capable of doing that. And their athleticism on offense, could make the difference. But this is a very intriguing game. I think it's going to be one of the better games going on throughout the state, and definitely one that if you want to make the trip down to Camden on Friday night will probably be worth your while.
Turning our attention now to Group 1, and first off, Central Group 1 in that sectional final. It's going to be the top 2 seeds meeting there. Number 1, Woodstown taking on number 2, Shore. And Joe Zedalis, what is the key for Shore in this game?
Well, I know some of my colleagues in our weekly picks all went Woodbury, but I think Shore Regional is a fascinating story and a fascinating team this year, Dan. They have a head coach who's in his first year there, Donnie Klein. It's his alma mater. And at Ocean, he had this, 4 and 5 wide receiver set that had, success here and there. He didn't always have a great quarterback, but he goes to Shore where they ran the wing T for 40 years. And it was run. And, maybe when the running back got tired, they threw the ball. But this year, he has been able to take that running history and mesh it with his offense, and it's been really effective. They're 10-0. They've only allowed points in 3 games. Their quarterback has been outstanding. Now, Josh Moeller is a kid whose main job for his first 3 years in high school was to hand the ball off or pitch it. Now, this year, he's 77 to 112. He's got 1,100 yards, and he's got 14 TDs and just 1 pick. What Shore Regional does well in the pass game is they spread the wealth. They'll take what you give them. They'll throw it underneath. They'll try to, beat a tackle and get a little bit of yards. I covered one game against New Egypt where they threw the ball to 8 different wide receivers. So they're going to do that. And the point I always like to make is there's not a lot of Group 1 schools that have enough talent at the secondary spots at corner or safety to thoroughly cover 4 or 5 guys. And Mahler, the quarterback, has become very effective about finding the open guy. He gets the ball out of his hand quick. And again, Shore can still run the football. They have 2 terrific downhill running backs. Neither of them are flashy. Neither of them are fancy, but they put their nose in and they moved the pile. And I know Woodstown is a good team. I know it's played a pretty good schedule, but again, I wonder if it has enough athleticism and depth to be able to deal with, a downhill running game and multiple wide receiver sets. And I will say this, Shore is not small up front. That makes a big difference for him on offense. On defense, they have a kid who's about 270, Xavier Morrow. And as the New Egypt coach told me, the guy eats double teams for lunch. And that's what they want to do on defense. They're going to try and stalemate you at the line of scrimmage. They're going to try and push the sticks backward, and they want to get you into situations where you have to throw the ball. So I think it's going to be a really good football game. I think, sure, it's like I said, it's a great story, after having the same coach, Mark Cosentino, for 4 decades. And now you bring a guy in with fresh blood and fresh ideas, and the kids have all said we're having so much fun. So I think it's going to be a real interesting game down there in Woodstown, Dan.
Bill Evans, Woodstown is trying to go for that second straight championship, and I think they're going to be helped out by getting a little healthier now as well.
Yeah, similar to some other teams I've talked about on this podcast. Woodstown was a team that was banging on the door, could not win their first sectional title, and finally broke through against a Woodbury team that had its number last year. So I think that'll help them here. The kids who have been through it, they know how to win now. They're obviously at home. Also similar to Shore, they have a first-year coach in Frank Trouts, who took over for John Adams, who not been there for 4 decades, but had been there about 15 years, and had really kind of built the program up to what it is today. They're a team that's not been overly explosive this year, but they've scored enough to win. They've been very good on defense. The only team that has scored more than 13 points against them this year is Glassboro, who obviously, we've talked about is extremely talented and probably the favorite in Group 1. They lost that game 20-7, but they were up at the half. So that kind of shows you that, Woodstown will hang around with anybody. They'll probably let, the opposition hang around too. They haven't blown out too many teams this year. But, they did shut out Schalick this year as well. Schalick is a team that's in a sectional final. They should get Bryce Belenfanti back. Belenfanti had a tremendous junior season last year, and this year was on the cusp of 1,000 yards before he hurt his ankle against Glassboro a couple weeks ago. He played against Pennsville on defense at linebacker. They decided to hold him out on offense to let that ankle heal a little bit. Alex Torres stepped in and ran for 3 touchdowns. But they expect Belenfanti to be back this week, playing both ways, and that'll be a big help to them. They have a quarterback in Garrett Lehman who stepped in the middle of the year because of an injury to the starter, and is also one of their top defensive players. He's got about a half a dozen picks. So that they're very solid on both sides of the ball. They'll run the football. They'll be very solid on defense, and like Joe said, I think this will be a very very interesting game between two teams that are gonna kind of want to control the ball, play good defense, and hopefully have a few more points at the end.
And finally, take a look at South Group 1. Glassboro, the top seed, taking on Schalick, the number 2 seed. Kevin Minnick gets a rematch from last year in a sectional final that was in the Central grouping, and now it's officially the South Group 1 final this year. And you've said it on previous broadcasts, Glassboro, this is the team that they believe they're a team of destiny. What do they need to do here to take home the sectional title and keep those state championship hopes alive?
Dan, I think Glassboro needs to do nothing different than what they've done all season. They've got to stick to this game plan because it has worked to perfection. In 2 playoff games, they've dropped 64 and 55 points. They've given up 2 touchdowns, and they came in the fourth quarter So essentially meaningless. This is a team that, at least I have said that if they do not at least get to the state final, it's a wasted year. But at this point, if they don't get to the state final and win, there's going to be a lot of disappointed people because this team has been absolutely unstoppable at this, through these first 10 weeks of the year. They come into this game outscoring opponents 376-54. The closest game they've had is 10 points twice, one being Schalick back on October 18th, 20-10. They've stepped on the gas in these last couple of weeks, and I think they're starting to really show what they're capable of doing. They've got D1 talent all over the field, and that doesn't happen at a Group 1 school. Joe had mentioned earlier about you don't have a lot of Group 1 schools that could put defensive backs out there to cover a multitude of receivers. Well, Glassboro certainly does. They've got any number of kids, starting with the Saab brothers, Amari and Xavier. So, this team is talented on both sides of the ball. Kenny Smith transferred from Hamilton. He's played in 7 games, and he's just 5 yards shy of 1,100 yards rushing on the season, and he's got 16 touchdowns. Not that he will reach the 5,000 rushing mark in this game because he's better than 300 away, but here's a kid who's close to 5,000 yards rushing and a former All-State running back. You've got the Saab brothers, like I mentioned, and Amari and Xavier, both outstanding wide receivers. They've combined for 19 touchdowns, nearly 1,500 yards, and 79 catches between them. They both also have a punt return touchdown, and they both also have a pick 6 during the year. So that's just 2 other kids. Throw Brandon Simmons, an all-state defensive lineman from last year, into the mix, who's got himself 12 sacks and is constantly in the backfield. And I haven't even mentioned everybody else. This team is spectacular, especially on the Group 1 level. And I've said it before, in a 1-game scenario, I put them on the field with just about any other team in the state. And then you flip the coin, you got Schalick. Schalick is a program that not too long ago was struggling, and to see where it has come in the last 2 years, is a tremendous credit to Mike Wilson and what they've done down there. They're coming at 8-3. They've won 3 straight games. Their last loss was to Glassboro, so they're going to come in obviously motivated to not only avenge that loss, but to get themselves a sectional final that most people probably never thought would even come close to happening. So, they've done a real nice job winning some football games. They got a senior quarterback in Kenai Simmons who, has thrown for 9 touchdowns. He's rushed for 9 touchdowns. Schalick's a team that really has no, what you would call, quote unquote, legitimate superstar. This is a bunch of high school kids playing on a team and working hard together to get where they're at today. Reggie Allen is their leading rusher. He's only got a tad bit over 600 yards and has sniffed the end zone 7 times. So, they don't have big name players, but here they are playing in a sectional final. So they've done some really nice things to get to this point. Riley Papiano has 108 tackles and 7 sacks, and a nice season for the senior linebacker. And a kid by the name of Alec Bramell, he's got 70 tackles and 4 sacks as a defensive lineman for them. So, they're going to come into this game. Glassboro is clearly going to be heavily favored. But, Schalick comes into this game, absolutely nothing to lose. And they're going to leave it all on the field. I think what it's going to come down to is that Glassboro is just going to have too many playmakers, too much talent for Schalick to be able to handle, because Kenny Smith is capable of rushing for 250 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And at the same time, you want to give everybody else some touches, and you've got the Saab brothers who are basically going to name the college that they want to go to when that time comes, more than capable of scoring on the outside as a receiver and doing damage defensively. So while it's a nice story, and it's better than nice. It's a great story for Schalick to get back to a sectional final for the second year in a row. But this Glassboro team just has way too many weapons for Schalick to try to defend. And, I don't want to say this game is going to be a blowout, but I think Glassboro probably wins convincingly and comfortably, but Schalick is not going to let them just walk all over him. They're going to make him earn it.
So those were the looks at all of the sectional championships in Central and South, groups 1 through 5. And now for our final take of the top storylines for the non-public games this weekend, we'll start off with you, Joe Zedalis. What game has caught your eye in the non-public ranks?
For me, that's an easy choice, Dan. That's the St. John Vianney at Red Bank Catholic game on Friday night down at Count Basie. These two schools have some incredible rivalries in other sports, particularly in girls basketball, where they are annually two of the finest teams in all of New Jersey. In football, they have not played that often recently, but this is going to be an intriguing game because these are two teams that have flaws, and how that plays out, I think it's going to be interesting. Just a couple quick numbers here. Like St. John Vianney's offense has scored 380 points. They've averaged 39 points a game in their last 5. But they've had issues on defense. They've given up 232 points. On the other hand, RBC is only allowing 16 points a game, and their offense 255. If Red Bank Catholic is going to get past this game and get back to the non-public B final and defend their championship, they're going to need a big game from their quarterback, Frankie Williams. He's been an incredible player over his 4 years, more than 4,800 yards, 57 touchdowns, and only 8 picks. RBC does not or has not run the ball consistently during the regular season, and for that reason, there's a little more emphasis put on throwing the ball. And really, few quarterbacks in New Jersey have been as clutch and as successful as Frankie Williams has. He's got 18 touchdowns this year. Vianney, on the other hand, is far more balanced. They have an absolutely tremendous sophomore running back in Abdul Turay. Mr. Turay last year was really, as a freshman, only got a cup of coffee at the end. And now this season, he's already rushed for 2,100 yards and 34 touchdowns. This is a kid who kind of reminds me of an Earl Campbell type runner. He doesn't look like he's running that fast, but it takes, 3, 4, 5 guys to bring him down. He's got tremendous yards after contact capabilities, and as Bum Phillips used to say, he gets up slow because he goes down slow, and that's Abdul Turay. And really, nobody has been able to throttle this kid. He's got 7 200-yard games, 2 in a row, 4 in his last 5 games. He's just a beast. But you can't really stack your defense to just stop Turay because their junior quarterback, Zach LaBarca, is having a pretty good year throwing the ball, but he's really come on of late as a runner. He's lightning fast. He's got 678 yards on the ground this year. And while he's not the great passer, he does enough to get the job done. Their head coach is Bobby Acosta. He's in his first year at SJV. He was a offensive coordinator and a play caller at the college level for 20 years, including stops at Syracuse and Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and places like that. And what he's done is he's put Zach LaBarca in situations to succeed. High percentage passes, throw to, they'll take what you give them. He's really been good. He's had at least 72 yards in 3 of his last 4 games. So for me, this game is going to come down to defense. Somebody's going to have to get a stop or a couple of stops and take advantage of that. If it comes down to kicking, RBC has an advantage there. But I really think this might be like a 32-30 game, and it's won on a turnover late in the game. So again, this is a ferocious rivalry between these two teams, and I think it's going to be a really big crowd in Red Bank, and I think it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Bill Evans, you have your eyes on something that's happening in Morristown up in North Jersey as St. Augustine Prep getting that 6th seed in non-public A. They're traveling to take on number 3 Delbarton with an upset on their mind.
Yeah, I always say in the playoffs, if you're going to go on the road and especially taking the long road from Atlantic County to Morris County, you better pack your defense in a running game, and St. Augustine certainly has that. They've got, in my mind, one of the best running backs in the state, and Julian Turney, who kind of lives for these kind of moments, loves the big game, loves a physical game, which I'm sure he's going to get this weekend. And just a very good, stout, top to bottom defense. In St. Augustine. Every year, I mean, this is obviously a big deal for them when they get into the playoffs, and get a chance to play one of these North Jersey teams that, play a round robin essentially against each other. But St. Augustine's been tested. Look, they got wins over Paul VI and Mainland and Millville. They got close losses to Winslow and Holy Spirit and RV, and all those teams are still playing this weekend. They only gave up 21 points to Winslow, and we talked earlier about how explosive that team is. That they probably did better than anybody in shutting them down. So they can play. I think with anybody. I think they can hang around with anybody. Can they score enough? That's always been the question. Can their passing game complement their running game? Again, that's always the question for them. But this is a battle tested team that I've said it before over the years. 2019 they went on the road and beat Seton Hall Prep, and then went to play St. Peter's when they were number 1 in the state and had a touchdown lead with 5 minutes to go. And 2021 beat this same Delbarton program, and last year beat St. Peter's. So they've proven they can do it. I don't think whether they win or lose this weekend validates or invalidates the season that they've had. They're a very good program. They've proven that. But I do think they can go up there, and they're certainly the underdogs, which they're used to being in these situations. But they can give Delbarton a game. I don't expect them to give up a ton of points, and if they can get Julian Turney going and he can get over 100 yards, they've got an excellent chance to win.
And again, a reminder to all fans that that's also going to be one of our NJ.com Games of the Week broadcasts. So fans can watch on Saturday at 1 p.m. live and on demand. St. Augustine taking on Delbarton. NJ.com/watch for all NJ.com subscribers. And Kevin Minnick, what is the non-public game that's caught your eye, with definitely a lot on the line here for the seeding purposes? Two teams that feel like they got wronged. They're trying to right things here as they advance to the semifinals in non-public B.
Yeah, we have St. Thomas Aquinas coming down to Absecon to take on Holy Spirit, and St. Thomas as the 5 seed and Spirit as the 4. Both teams, I've got to imagine both teams were not happy with the seed that they received from the committee, feeling that they were both better than that by at least 1 spot, maybe 2, depending on who you want to talk to. This game is going to be a real challenge for both teams. And speaking from on the Holy Spirit side of the game, they're going up against the St. Thomas team that is getting healthier, and it's better players that had suffered some injuries are back and are going to be, key players for them now. Whereas just a couple of weeks ago, St. Thomas was a different team. So Spirit comes in, they've won 8 in a row. They haven't lost since the season opener to Millville. And like a lot of other teams, they've played a schedule that's been extremely difficult. They've played against teams that are still playing football: Millville, Camden, St. Augustine, Delsea. So they're battle tested as well. And to rip off the 8 wins they have since that opening loss says a little bit something about this team, that they're not a 35-point difference team anymore. They are a team that is more than capable of scoring points, playing tough defense, and taking advantage of their opportunities. And they've done that this season. They've shown the potential to blow out teams. They come in with 4 shutouts where they've dropped 39, 41, 35, and 38 points. 38-0 last week over Donovan Catholic. They've also showed the ability to win the close game. They win at St. Augustine. They rally in the fourth quarter to beat them 14-10. They rally against an Ocean City team that, is always very difficult to beat. They rally to beat them 15-13. And then, they go to Camden, a 2-time sectional champion who's playing for a third, and they beat them during the course of the year in late September, 23-12, in a game which they had 7 sacks. So Holy Spirit has shown the ability to win in in different ways. And I expect this game to be another close one for them. Both teams are going to play with a chip on their shoulder. They both feel they should like we said, have felt they've been a better seed. But at some point you just have to kind of throw that away and you just got to win the game. So Holy Spirit's on a roll. Like I said, they've won 8 in a row. They're playing pretty good football. Ty Costabile has done a nice job, managing the offense, directing the flow of things. He's not a flashy quarterback, but he gets the job done. They've got a 1-2 punch, kind of a thunder and lightning type of running back situation with Jasir Ward and Amir Hicks. And they can, they've done a nice job defensively. They're strong in the linebacker core with Nick Medina and Tommy Innocente leading the charge. So they've got some experienced players. Holy Spirit's got a pretty good tradition of going deep in the playoffs. They've got some state championships on their resume. And obviously they want another shot, at winning another one. It's going to take another total team effort to get it done. But, I think they're more than capable of handling the situation.
So thank you very much, guys, for your comprehensive look at all of the sectional finals in South and Central in groups 1 through 5, and then taking a look at the non-public games that have caught your eye for this upcoming weekend in non-public B and also in non-public A. A reminder, fans, that from the opening kickoff to the end of the season, NJ.com's award-winning staff of reporters and photojournalists put you in the middle of the action. For in-depth coverage of all these games around New Jersey, including photo galleries, recaps, and stats, visit nj.com/HS Sports. So I'd like to thank my compatriots here, Mike Kinney, Kevin Minnick, Bill Evans, and Joe Zedalis, as well as Brian Deacon for their support in getting us over the goal line here for another episode of the Jersey Blitz. So for everybody here, I'm Dan Long saying so long, and we'll see you next time here on NJ.com.